topnames, speciale topnames in het kader van Nerderlands. En Nerderlands is een festival voor de international tech scene. We zitten hier in Pension Homeland. Pension Homeland is een restaurant, is een bar, is een hotel, is een brouwerij. Ja, dus we komen hier graag.
Ja, zeker.
Alleen om hier reden. Dat is ook een prachtige locatie in het centrum van Amsterdam. Vlakbij het Scheepvaartmuseum, vlakbij Nemo, vlakbij het Centraal Station. Ik weet niet of de camera nog van buiten net nog deed of dat het te donker is geworden, maar prachtige plaatjes hadden we hier. Welkom Bill Ferster. Bill, this is called Nerderlands. Is that what you are, a nerd?
I think I didn't ever identify myself that way back then, but I probably was. Still am.
So to you, what is a nerd?
Well, nerdism feels very strongly about technology and exists in it only in its space. I hope. I don't know if they're nerds my age, but they probably are.
Yeah. So what do you do?
I'm a professor at the University of Virginia. I teach historical visualization, which is basically taking history documents and letting them tell historical stories about that. And we use visualization as a tool for students to learn history. It's primarily U.S. history, but we do some other things as well.
Yeah, because I think it goes for every country, but I think for America as well, it's quite good to learn about the history of the rest of the world as well.
It would help.
Yeah.
But then director of visualization, can you elaborate on that? Because it's in relationship to history and data.
Yeah.
You know, how does that work and what is so special about it?
Visualization is, as I mentioned before, it's the idea of taking these documents. History in some ways is a better subject for doing visualization and for doing digitized things than almost any other subject. One would think that it's math and science are the things that would be really used in that, but it turns out history, there's so many things digitized in the world. Every archives in the world now digitizes all of their materials and they put it on, they transcribe it, and transcription is actually a big deal, because handwritten, particularly if you get, beyond 100 years ago, handwritten things are very difficult, and kids these days, I don't know how it is in the Netherlands, but in the U.S., the kids aren't taught cursive writing anymore, and they can't read it anymore, which is a real problem.
They can't read it.
They can't read. No.
Why would you read? I think a lot of people can't write it, but they still can read it.
No, they have a hard time reading it, and it becomes a real issue because we send kids to the archives to look at things, and they have issues with it. 20-year-olds now often do, but. In events, but the world is trying to put things online and making things accessible, and there are so many documents. It can be data, it can be weather data, it could be all kinds of things, and they're digitizing it, putting it into a format that computers can understand, and images and motion pictures and the whole thing. And you can take these historical artifacts and actually use them to tell stories about history, and that becomes.
But I can imagine that your what you do at the university really touches on subjects like machine learning, artificial intelligence,
somewhat
data analysis. Because
but they're not.
No?
You would hope.
Because what you tell me right now that you have. So many
I have those interests in those things, but I work with people that are in the humanities departments for the most part, and they're not interested in machine learning. They're basically not even interested in the web for the most part. It'd be shocking how difficult it is to get faculty members to use technology tools for good reason. They're a pain in the neck to use, and they're not necessarily successful when you use them in the classroom. And so our goal is to try and take web-based tools, things that connect to Google Docs and other kinds of things, and be able to basically connect these archives out in the world and get students to be able to look at these things, the primary documents, the primary source documents, saying these are the ones, these are original photographs of a particular thing, whatever they are, and use those as the information that they use to make their stories.
Can you give examples? What do you think examples of good visualization that help us, or maybe better understand, or have a better view of history?
Well, for example, our university is very big in Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson founded the university in 1820 something, I can't remember the exact date. But so we do a lot of things that way. So one history class we did, and typically it's history students who have to take this class, and they like taking this class because the final exam is not a 50-page paper, which is typical on a history class. They have to do a visualization, so they have to go out and get some materials and make a case, have a historical question in mind, make a case about what they want to say, and then use the documents to make the case. So we had we took a trip. We didn't take a trip. Jefferson took a trip in 1786 to England when he was the plenipotentiary of France. And the thing about Jefferson and a lot of big historical figures is they document everything. And he in particular basically had this memorandum book, this very, very detailed things of everything he ever spent at any given time. And every letter he ever wrote, he had this machine that he could make copies of the letters, because they didn't have Xerox machines in the 18th century. And every letter he got back, and the idea was to use those things to make a statement about what did Jefferson do in that 6-week trip. And so we had students from different disciplines. Some were history majors. We had an art historian who was interested in doing particular things about it. We had a guy who was interested in the letters that he sent and received while he was there. And they basically tracked all the letters going across the Atlantic from England back and forth, and it was interesting to see it visually, because you would see it took 6 weeks to get a letter from across the Atlantic back then. It's not like he didn't send an email today, and so those kinds of are interesting, and we have the students actually working with the historians at Monticello and things like that, so they could actually, not everything's in the archives. So they would actually have to go out and digitize things and transcribe and things like that.
Isn't what is great about visualizations is it helps you understand sometimes complex matters, but isn't the other side of it that it very often simplifies the world as well? Because a visualization most of the time is, or it is in one page, or it is in 1 minute, or it is in. Sometimes I have the idea that it's simplifying the world as well. Yeah,
and it can compress time or expand time, or compress space or expand space, or there's a guy. Richard Saul-Werman, who used to he's a designer, and he said there are 5 ways of looking at the world. He's an old guy, and he said I've looked at millions of different things, and it all comes down to this. He has this acronym called LATCH. You can organize things by location. Alphabetize them, which doesn't have much use in this case, but T is time, C is categorization. Sorry. And hierarchy. And so if you look at things along those 4 dimensions, and the more things you can put in there and get this multiple layer of data and say this happened at a particular time, this happened to this person when, who knew that person that did this and did that. You can kind of tell a very complex story of history or some historical event, and make some insight that you just wouldn't see if you couldn't see it all together happening at the same time or place or whatever the dimension that you were traversing on.
Yeah, that brings me to another initiative of yours, because that's directly related to what you just said. It's connected dots.
Right.
Can you explain us what that idea is about?
I have a colleague that is, for the last probably 10 years, has been researching the past of African Americans, formerly enslaved people.
And track down the family ties.
And the problem is about people that used to be slaves is they were treated as property, not treated as people. They weren't counted in the census.
Yep.
They weren't that, and it gets even crazier in the U.S. things, because they would first talk about them only by how much they were worth, and they were male or female maybe, and then you maybe learn something else about them, that they have a first name maybe, and maybe a last name, but connecting the family ties, and it's very important from a genealogical perspective for African Americans to be able to go back before the Civil War, when the American Civil War, when slavery was abolished, to find that, and it's a very difficult thing. And so what we want to do is try and use some of these new techniques, machine learning, AI type things, to go back and try and connect all these. We have all these pieces of data all around here, and there's enough information, and there's some things we know about people. I mean, children are younger than their parents for the most part. They had a father and a mother at one point. Their fathers and their mother. So there's a structure involved, but it's very difficult to go through the records back when, partially because the records are very sparse and they're hard
what
to get.
What intrigued me is that people have been doing that for a long time, but only on an individual basis.
Right,
I mean,
right.
it's not so difficult.
Oh, it's a big deal now.
It's not so difficult to track down one individual person,
Right.
all his family ties, blah blah blah. But to do it for everybody at the
Right.
same time.
Right, and I think that's the
challenge.
part that makes it interesting, though, because I think it's difficult to find one. If there's a record of you and you were considered a human being, which these people weren't, they were considered property. It's easier to do that, but in a sense, by looking at everybody all at once, there is in fact only one person, right? And that person had only one mother and one father. So if you look at the whole picture and use these new techniques, so one of the things that Martinez and I were talking about, proposing at Nederlands tomorrow, or I don't know if it's tomorrow or the next day. Is to see whether we can get a group of people interested in getting involved in this project. So we're calling it the Connect the Dots project. It's kind of an obvious name for the idea, but we've got a lot of data. This woman that I've been working with in Virginia works with the Central, whatever it's called, some sort of historical association that has gone out and digitized so many of these sources. So we've got a lot of the data. And we have some ideas on how to connect the data together. We just need people to do it. And
I mean, there are a lot of private initiatives from websites where you can track down your forefathers.
Right.
I mean, myheritage.com, blah blah blah.
Right.
I mean, they're also analyzing and opening up lots of data sources.
And oddly enough, it's the Mormons, the Church of Latter-day Saints, are big in that because part of their religion is to find out where there's. So they've been doing a lot of work in machine learning and kind of ways of doing it. So there's a lot of research in doing it. I think the time is ripe to do it. It's just finding a group of people that would find this interesting. And I was a little nervous that this would be too much of a U.S.-centric kind of thing, but Martinez seemed to think that it would have some appeal among the Amsterdammers, and hopefully we can get some people to.
So that's what you want to do. That's why you're here.
It's one of the main reasons.
I think definitely. I mean, you take the slaves' perspective in the United States, but I mean
you could use
almost every single Dutch person has at a certain point forefathers from different countries all over the world.
Right.
I mean,
no, the technique for using this kind of search could be used anywhere with anybody. It's just, and I'm surprised that there really hasn't been a lot of research in computer science on this. But I'm not a computer scientist, so that's not my field. But oddly enough, the Mormons are doing a lot of it, but they keep that fairly close to them.
So it's for you this week here and why you're here. Is that an example? Before you, we were talking about the hacker story where journalists and designers and programmers come together and do stuff. If you look at where we are at the moment, is that what's happening in all fields? Like bringing the different expertise, bringing the different things together?
It would be nice if that were true.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know whether it's not true, but I think that's what's required now, and that's where you can really make big breakthroughs, is by pulling together this technique from here and this technique from somewhere else.
But like you say, I wish it was true, because you see in your daily work and where you work at your university, that's still difficult to get people using the new possibilities.
Well, it's crazy, but but that has to do with people in different fields, the humanities particular, and there's a whole new field called digital humanities, which has gotten fairly big. The English people use that a lot. But in general, they're not very interested in using technology for teaching, and they I can see both sides of it. I can see because technology is a pain in the neck. I mean, you look at all this equipment you have here, and how long it took to set it up. Teachers don't have time for this kind of thing, or the money, or the interest in doing it.
Well, the thing there is there is a really nice camera that is already out in America and was supposed to be out in January. That's just like a sort of really small 4K camera.
Oh, really?
That brings like together for $400.
Wow.
So look at it. It's called Mevo.
Oh, Mevo,
and I think
okay.
that can.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that,
Yeah, it's a
actually.
really nice machine. So hopefully in a month's time I will have it as well over here. Can I vraag stellen?
Yeah, I can't let you go before. I mean, I make the connection to somewhere in your past. I mean, you're now the expert in visualization of historical subjects and helping students and scholars to connect to, digital primary documents and sources. But you're also one of the founders of the digital editing in the world.
Yeah, back then. That's actually
I have to
how I met
mention it. I mean,
Martinez.
you were the one who first, thought of the non-linear editing systems. You were the founder of EMC.
EMC, right?
We're talking 1988.
He was 88, I think. Yeah.
I mean, I was a video professional at the time, and I first started editing in Hilversum in Dutch television with the first Avid non-linear system. So, I mean, I really admire your work from that period,
that was very nice.
I think we have to mention that. And I think it's also directly connected now, because at that time, I mean, that was for the first time that video editing was visualized.
Right.
I mean, the timeline is your concept, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. They've been
Oh,
doing
but
timelines a long time.
before, yeah.
The timelines have been around. We operationalize the timeline first for digital editing.
Right.
Yeah. I'll take that one.
Don't be modest about it. I mean, it was a revolution in video editing. I mean,
Yeah, no, it definitely changed video editing, which is
and
good.
you visualized. I mean, with your first systems, the way.
No, video editing before, probably most of your audience is not going to remember how it was done. It was cruel.
It was cruel, yeah.
Basically,
I
you have to.
remember sitting next to an editor, and you say,
Say,
okay, in point, out point,
Right.
two frames.
Or the producer says, maybe you should have changed that one over there, and then basically
no.
everything has to be
Start
changed.
all
from
over
them.
again. Yeah.
So non-linear editing. But I was talking with somebody at dinner tonight, and we were talking that it may be good or bad. I'd be curious your thoughts about it in terms as an editor who's edited both linearly and non-linearly. So obviously it's so much easier. You can change things. It's the word processor. So it's the same analogy would be typing term papers on a manual typewriter. It was crazy.
Yep.
But on the other hand, do you think as an editor who's done both that you had to be a better editor to be a linear editor because you had to think ahead because the cost of making a change was so great that you actually had to be a much more of a craftsman before?
Well, it's a very interesting discussion because it's all about making a plan beforehand,
Right.
or let something happen. If you're non-linear editing, you just start.
Well, now that you can just change anything, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
So what happens is that because my background is audio, and I started with Pro Tools as one of the first audio systems, and like you say, because then I had 2 hours to do something with an editor, so they were expensive, so I had to prepare everything because otherwise, and now, say people with all the rough material, and it's endless rough material because there is no, it's an interesting question.
It's definitely a different world.
For me, non-linear was a real breakthrough because I was not depending anymore on technicians.
Right.
I could, if I wanted to spend 5 days and nights, 24 hours a day working on an offline.
Yeah, no, that's an important point actually.
And that's an important point.
So you weren't mediated by an expensive and highly trained person that.
Yeah, and it also irritated me. The guy sitting next to you, and after making one cut, saying, "Okay, waiting for the next command." Okay, what do I have to do? But
Well, now you've got Final Cut on your Mac.
Sure, or for example, we talk
On my
about a
phone.
lot about it
my
later
daughter,
on the bar.
my daughter is 14. She's vlogging now, and she edits everything on the iPhone.
Yeah. The thing is, when we go to South by Southwest, this is our camera. And,
That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's
the other
crazy.
thing.
We used to sell something that was for $40,000 that weighed. It was the size of the system he had over there, and it was terrible. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it was terrible for its day. Everything has to be. Compared to what you could do so much more on an iPhone now than what you could do back then. But now is now.
I remember the guy
we can talk about this for hours.
Yeah,
but,
and we'd love to. So we do that later, okay?
Okay.
No, but the interesting thing for me in your story is that from visualizing the editing process to visualizing history and visualizing data I think it's an interesting,
Yeah, no,
and
it-
quite consistent line.
I mean,
Yeah.
you could say
The
it
timeline,
less
yeah.
less kindly and say, I just keep doing the same thing over and over
Yeah,
again. But
yeah.
it is using those kinds of techniques. I think are valuable.
Yeah. Oh, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming. We're actually the guests in the Homeland
Right.
Brewery. They brew some very special beer.
Oh, great.
I mean,
Well,
take it to your hotel and
Okay,
drink
great.
it tonight. Don't
right.
get too drunk.
Oh,
but,
it's cold too.
And let's later on
Okay.
remember all the crappy times we've had.
Thank you very much for
All right, well, thank you very much.
iPhones.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay.
Jullie bedankt voor het kijken. Blijf kijken, want we hebben nog 2 interviews te gaan als je nu live kijkt. Als je on demand kijkt, dan weet je dat je al die interviews terug kunt vinden via youtube.com/fastmovingtargets of fastmovingtargets.nl. Tot zo direct.
Dag.
Okay, that was fun.
Yeah.
So did you really please choose me?
Thanks, Phil.
You never know. Actually, you don't. Actually, not all the time.